Hi, everybody, and welcome to the 2020 New Jersey STEM Innovation Panel. We're so excited to have everyone here today and really thank you for joining us. My name is Josh Goldberg, and I'm a co-founder of a company called Legends of Learning. We provide a game-based platform that teachers use to help their students learn K through 8 math and science. I grew up playing video games, probably way too many of them, and wanted to kind of bring the joy and engagement of video games to classrooms throughout America. The panel we have today is part of the Legends of Learning Engagement Leadership Series. We strive to be on the cutting edge of new game-based learning strategies and techniques around math, science, and STEM. In that pursuit, we launched the Educational Leadership Series to explore the latest technological advances, current and projected trends, and solutions to the issues affecting education today, with a specific emphasis on STEM. This series features collaborations with the best and brightest minds, and we have plenty of those on the panel today, to produce thought-provoking content and educational content. We also run a series of virtual STEM competitions that are on our website that any of your students can participate in. This is obviously a very interesting school year, and so our series this fall is focusing specifically on STEM and COVID and the impacts thereof. We have some amazing panelists with me today, and I'm going to introduce them quickly in random order. I'll start with Bonnie Hohenshilt from Freehold Township. Bonnie has been a science teacher for over 20 years, and she is now the Math and Science Instructional Coordinator for grades 6 through 8 in Freehold Township. Next, Jeannine Lanphear from North Brunswick Township Public Schools, where she's the Supervisor of Math and Science for middle grades. Her passion is working with North Brunswick students and families to improve access to STEM, STEAM, and STREAM. I actually don't know what STREAM is, so I'll have to ask you a question about that. I'm not sure what the R is. Okay. Educational opportunities through contextualized learning and expanded district offerings. Margaret Scuteri is the Supervisor of Science and Instructional Technology in Manalapan-Englishtown Regional School District, and she's been doing that for 5 years. Prior to that, she taught 6th grade for over 15 years. And Jamy Thomas. Jamy has the longest bio because he has about 14 different jobs for his school district. He can apparently also fix and drive school buses. But in addition to that, he is the Supervisor of STEAM for the Pennsville Public School District. He previously taught high school science, was the district's Director of Athletics. I was not joking about those 12 positions, and the district Supervisor of Math and Science. And he's inherited several the departments over the past few years, and now also is the district's testing coordinator. So great. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really honored to have you. As a quick administrative note, we're going to kind of talk for about 45 minutes or so, and we're going to save 10 minutes for questions at the end. So if at any point during our discussion you have a question, please put it in the chat, and Lindsay Buckle, who is assisting me, will bring those questions up towards the end. If we see something, we might also try and answer it in the middle. So let's get going. So I think just maybe by way of context, we could kind of go around the virtual room just to kind of understand what each of your district's instruction looks like today. Are you virtual? Are you hybrid? Are you both? And I'll just start with Bonnie.
So our district today, right now, is 100% virtual, and we've been there for about a week, and we have plans to go back soon into a hybrid system where students attend school in cohorts 2 to 3 days a week, and then learn virtually, synchronously with students who are at home.
Jamy?
So we are, as of today, fully in person. Obviously, we have about 30% of our students that have opted and families that have opted for virtual as per the governor's orders, but we are in every day, half day, due to the numbers. We haven't been able to figure out social distancing at lunch, so we do cut out before lunchtime. And we are primarily synchronous, but we are very flexible to what staff has that's working for them, and we don't have really any mandates on the way they do their instruction.
Interesting. So two people, two different answers so far. Jeannine.
My answer will sound a lot more like Bonnie's. So we started the year in virtual, but as of today, we went back to virtual. We anticipate a plan to go to hybrid with the 2 or 3 days in school with rotational groups, but anything could change based on, watching the situation. Our district has been really good about paying close attention to the local health crisis.
Great. Margaret.
So we started out the year hybrid, half day for grades, let's see, 1 through or 2 through 8. And then we have our pre-K and our K where they're half day, half of a half day. And they have been in every day. We also have an option for a virtual academy, and we have a large part of the community that opted for that. And so we have teachers specifically assigned to the virtual academy and students that are specifically assigned to those teachers. And then as that academy became populated, we started to allow, as needed, those that needed to be quarantined to attend synchronously, and so they're at home basically dialing into the classroom. But we also have at the end of the day, so the teachers are working a full day, and we have an office hours or a feedback loop that students then log back on even if they've been in during the day, and then sort of make one-on-one connections with their teachers. But we are looking to move more into our every day as the weeks continue.
Interesting. So this is certainly an interesting school year. So, as you guys kind of think about adapting to this new normal, question, what is the biggest kind of STEM curriculum lesson that you've learned? And maybe we'll start with Margaret and work our way back this year. So in this new environment, what's the biggest lesson about kind of delivering STEM, science, math curriculum that you've learned? So
we have to recognize that it's not going to be the same as in-person science. We have, especially in the 6 through 8, a very dedicated science team, and they really want to do those hands-on experiments that they are used to doing. So we've been able to adapt to some degree, do some social distancing in the classroom, and keep it up to certain extents. It's a lot more teacher demonstrations, and for the students that are at home, we've been sending home a lot more materials and then have the virtual instructor guiding them. We have definitely leaned a lot more on simulations through different programs that we have, and a lot of collaboration through a lot of the Google accounts that we have. One thing we did do was we increased our robotics in the 6th grade and sent up the individual robots home, and then they come back at the end of each semester, and the teacher is able to monitor what the students are doing with these little bots while they're at home. So that's been a plus, at least for that program.
Cool. Robotics, Jeannine.
So I would say that as we've adjusted, we started by thinking about the hope that we would be back in person later in the year, or at least partially in person. So we first shifted some sequence of our curriculum to try to hold off some of those really more demanding hands-on labs and do some of the other types of research work or things that we felt could be accomplished at home. But we have a very diverse community, and we are 43% economically disadvantaged. We have discovered through the pandemic just how stressed many of our families are economically, as well as many other areas of their real life. And so when we try to do experiences at home, we have to be really cognizant of bringing any requirement down to a really low common denominator of what material a child might need to locate in their home. So although we've had some great ideas in that way, going with virtual simulations or gamification, with legends as well as some of our other options is really the thing that we can count on, as long as the students have Wi-Fi, which can sometimes be a challenge for our population as well. But, you know, sending kids outside to make observations in certain content area has been, you know, successful. And then just, you know, chunking out the activities as best we can and making them interactive in new kinds of ways.
Yeah, it's fun. I have two young kids, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old who's in 2nd grade, and they're home right now for school. And every once in a while they come up and I need a deck of cards, I need a plastic spoon, I need a glue stick, and it just, you can kind of see how these teachers are kind of trying to adapt on the fly with like everyone kind of has a deck of cards in their house somewhere, right? Like trying to figure out what everyone kind of has and how they can use that in a way to do it. It's been kind of fascinating. Jamie.
Yeah, so we're K to 12 district, so I kind of see it from two different lenses. The elementary lens, just as you just got done talking about, Josh, we have a STEM program that runs 2 through 5 with a dedicated teacher just for STEM that is a student's one of their special area classes that they go to weekly. So she has really adapted that class to everything they do in class. She has the kids doing the exact same hands-on activities at home, and she recommends things that she knows are around the house. You know, the empty toilet paper roll, the empty paper towel roll, the milk carton, you know, those types of things that she gets really creative, and she'll actually, you know, video simulate what they're doing in class for those kids that are virtual, but still allow them to come in synchronously and show off what they've done. You know, she does a lot of things based off of the engineering design process. So that whole, you know, to draw it, build it, test it, rebuild, retest, you know, she's got all that going. So from that standpoint, I feel like, you know, that's most of our kids will tell you it's probably one of their favorite times during the day, because they do kind of get away from the computer a little bit and just get to do some things hands-on. And even when they're home, they're getting to do that. When you start to get to 6 to 12 and you're more geared into science and some of those labs, it's a little more challenging. Our teachers have done a great job, because we do majority of our work synchronously, middle school and high school, of incorporating virtual kids into groups with students that are in class. You know, so they are an active participant virtually with that lab. So they at least get to see what's going on and see those things happen in person. Some of the STEM things that we do have been a little bit more challenging. We utilize, one of the programs we utilize is Project Lead the Way, which is very computer heavy, and it's just not compatible with a Chromebook. So we've struggled there a little bit. We've kind of stuck more to the drawing portion of that design and not necessarily the CAD side of things. So that's been a little bit tough, you know, on the teacher and the students with that, you know, both virtually and in person. We just don't want to go too far with the in-person kids when the virtual kids don't get that experience. So we're trying to extend some of those, you know, some of the less build type activities.
Great. So toilet paper rolls as a science disposable. I like it. It's great recycling, I guess, right?
Yes, it's upcycling.
You use it again, and then you recycle it. Bonnie.
So I think that one of the most important lessons that we've learned is being able to actually monitor, engage student engagement, because when students are in the class, in a science classroom, it's so easy to draw them in and see their excitement and their engagement. But when they're at home, we've really had to find specific tools, virtual labs, but also technology that allow us to like see their thinking. So it's not that we're assuming they're thinking, but we can actually see their thoughts, they can express them and share them. So finding ways that we can really gauge their engagement and ensure that the instruction is getting across.
Great. So we heard some really interesting things about kind of using outside the box tools, in some cases trying some new things like robotics, making sure they stay engaged. I mean, that's one of the challenges, is like science is probably one of the most naturally engaging things in the classroom, yet one of the most hardest things to replicate at home. So what is a STEM best practice that you do now that you did not use before? So like if you could say like one thing that you're doing now, and Margaret, you can't say robotics again, you got to come up with something new. that you weren't doing before, that you're doing, and you really, really like it. It's just working really well. And if someone else asked you, hey, like, what's one thing I should try? What would that one thing be? Jamie, we'll start with you this time.
Sure. So in the classes that I've observed so far, one of the things that I've seen, and we're actually getting ready to put together a PD on it, that has worked really well in the areas of both math and science, is a Google product called Jamboard. And to build that cohesiveness between the in-person and the virtual student for us, Jamboard has been great. It's very much an interactive whiteboard, but it can be used either by a small group of kids, or it can be used by the whole class. So that feedback for the teacher to see that the student at home is engaged, as well as the students in class, that's been one that, again, and really even over just the last month or two, that we've seen that one pop up. And I know there were some things that we were using before, like Nearpod is a similar product to that, but we are a Google for education school, so everything we do is through Google. Having Jamboard as an option has been great.
Ooh, and that's something that you weren't using before this school year.
That's correct. Yep.
Interesting. Jeannine.
So I would say similarly, adding on more tech-enhanced formative assessments, because you just can't walk around the classroom and observe, right? So similarly, we have now brought everyone on board with Pear Deck in math and science in my grade levels, so that they can just sort of kick their Google Slides up a notch and add the interactivity, as well as the different modes that can be used. All of the teachers were using a variety of other systems in terms of interacting with math and science, but just interacting with the kids to capture formative assessment, and just really being able to monitor them. We use Securely as well. So between watching what they're doing on like a Pear Deck and using Securely to see where they actually are, and helping them with the tech problems that go along, that's been something that is in every classroom now.
Just a quick sidebar, like have you guys been surprised at the technical wizardry of a lot of kids?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
They pick it up quickly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My 5-year-old has turned into like a Zoom wizard, sometimes at the most awkward and inopportune times. Bonnie.
Many of the teachers that struggle with technology, it's always just ask the kid. They'll tell you what you need if you haven't figured it out yet, and that always works.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I think is painful for a lot of kids at first, especially the earlier kids. But when you think about the few good things that might come out of this, is to the extent the kids have technology, they've gained years of experience using it, which will benefit them in the long term. Yep. Bonnie, sorry, you were saying?
So actually, I think that I'm going to build on that. I think that that's a huge area of growth in terms of the level of proficiency of all teachers and the level of proficiency of all students. And it took some time to become comfortable and proficient with the technology, but it was you have to slow down to allow everyone to be able to use them and to master different skills. And our teachers are definitely using Jamboard and Pear Deck. And in addition, Formative is another tool that we've been using to kind of monitor student engagement and to deliver instruction and to teach through using all of those tools. But I think it's not just certain teachers that are using the technology, but there's this wide range of comfortability, which is excellent.
So you're saying the best practice is just kind of more wholesale adoption of these tools that you kind of had around before, but maybe you didn't need to use, and now through necessity, you've kind of forced to go through the curve and adopt them.
Right, and you can start to see different ways of using them. Even when the students return, I think that there will be more blending. Our school has been one-to-one for many years now, so we've always used a lot of technology, but there's just a level of being comfortable with different tools and being able to pick the right tool for the right task once you know them well enough.
Great. Margaret?
So we did implement a few new tools this past year. For science in particular, we went with a program called Inkits that is specifically designed we're just using it for grades 6 through 8 right now. And they'll do actual labs which assess all the different parts of the science and engineering practices and the cross-cutting concepts. And that it is a difficult program for the students to navigate because it's new, but the data you get from it has been amazing. But we really have relied on some of the old tools that we've had. Classcraft and GimKit have been very popular. We do use Jamboard extensively. We use Nearpod, and then some are still relying on Edpuzzle, even though Nearpod has a Edpuzzle-like component to it. But I think it was Bonnie who said that it was getting the teachers comfortable and figuring out what resource was going to be good in what situation. And we addressed that in the summertime by running what we kind of like an Ed Camp style virtual session, only called it MERS Camp. And it was incredibly popular. And we had teachers volunteer to present virtually, either by themselves or with somebody else. And everything was available on our Google Drive, and people signed up for it, and they could participate throughout the week. And the presenters were responsible for checking the work the teachers done and any kind of questions that had come up for 1 week only. And I have to tell you that I am still getting requests for access to that program, from teachers who were unable to attend, whether they weren't here at the time or, what have you. But that really has been a game changer. And that was 100% done by teachers for their colleagues. So I would highly recommend, run a program like that.
Interesting. I want to follow up, and I'm going to bounce forward a little bit with something that Bonnie was talking about. We've had a lot of technology adoption. Probably, some people say several years. We've been adopting technology for a while, but perhaps we've had several years of technology adoption forced into several months, which is painful short term, probably beneficial long term. And we're always thinking about, when you have an event like COVID, there's certain behaviors that change immediately. But when you think about a year, 2, 5 from now, a lot of those go away, right? So we're probably not going to be wearing masks in supermarkets 5 years from now, assuming we have a vaccine. But what things stay with us, right? And so I'd love to kind of hear your thought on a thing or two in your district that has changed during COVID that you think will stick with the district. And then perhaps maybe a thing that for each of you that won't. So like, for example, for me, like we're probably not going to be using Zoom in education as much next school year when we're all back in person. Maybe on snow days or something like that, but probably not quite as much. So start with Jeannine. What's one thing that you think will stick and why?
I think that the flipped classroom approach with a lot of recordings of labs, a lot of recordings of, for instance, science read-alouds, where teachers might have, done some of that support in class, but when we needed to record it ahead of time, I think we did a better job with it. I think we translated more content than we had in the past. And so letting kids revisit material because it was recorded, I think is really helpful for many of our challenged learners. And I think some of the benefits that have really come out of teachers seeing that, I'm really hopeful are going to stay with us longer term.
Interesting. Jamy.
Yeah, I would definitely echo some of that in the idea that, you think about how did we handle students that were absent from class in the past? How did we catch those kids up if they weren't able to stay after, or they weren't able to, to find a time in their schedule to get extra help? And that whole idea of, Google Meet and Zoom and all those things go away, but an idea like Screencastify and being able to video your whole group instruction, that might be 5 minutes. I also think it has forced teachers to really streamline what is in that whole group instruction so that it's not extending too far. And I think this concept was coming anyway. I mean, you look at, anything you need to go fix is on YouTube. I mean, you need to change your oil. You can go watch a YouTube video on how to do it, whether we have any reference to what we're supposed to be doing or not, it's there. And that kind of same concept, it was building steam. This pushed us to that where the teachers have now done it. And I think that they will see the benefit in having those things and continuing to do them in the future is going to be, great for all kids.
Bonnie?
So not necessarily just for the district, but I think that there's been a huge change in the platforms that we're using. All of these pieces of technology that we've been talking about, and like Legends of Learning, have made huge changes over a very small time. So it's not just that the programs are interesting and useful, but they really meet the needs of the teachers. And I think that these changes are going to allow them to be used more in like a blended learning setting by everyone, by all staff, not just somebody who's familiar with technology and comfortable with it, but everyone is, because they're really going to meet our needs because of this kind of accelerated improvement of all of these programs because of need. Interesting.
Margaret?
So I do think that we have added a lot of programs on to increase student engagement. And as long as budget allows, we'll keep them on. That's a hint, Josh. But the one thing I think that is interesting is teachers have become so much more confident in their use of technology that now they are differentiating more than I've ever seen before. So they can send out a formative assessment, they get immediate feedback back, and then they can shoot out different assignments to different students. And the idea that Johnny is getting something different than Mary over here is gone because now they're at home or they're behind a computer. And I think that prior to this, maybe they weren't so comfortable with that practice, and I think now that will definitely be something that will stay because they can see that it works.
What do you think, and we'll stay with Margaret, and what do you think fades away? What do you think something that like you're doing now that a year from now you'll be like, oh man, I cannot believe we were doing that, or that just,
I really
just has no place in school?
From me personally, I really hope that I'm back in the buildings. I miss the teachers. I miss the students. I don't want to do a virtual observation. I want to do an actual observation. But from the teacher standpoint, I know that they really just want to dive into that hands-on. They don't want to have to worry about, is this properly cleaned in between sessions? I think that they need to get back into the classroom.
Yeah. Jeannine?
In terms of what I'm afraid will fade away is I do agree with some of what we've said, that this has really forced teachers to streamline, to get really tight on their standards and objectives and the concepts. So even when it comes to assessment, how do you assess from a distance and know that you're getting any information that's going to help us with instruction when you don't know where these answers are coming from? Right? So in response, we had to really take a look at more performance-based assessment, things that are not Googleable. Googleable things are really fast and easy to grade. And so the demand on teachers to grade more conceptually based work, more performance-based work has really been a heavy lift. And so, I do get afraid that the steps forward we've made in that area may possibly be taken in the light of COVID. And when we go back in the classroom, that tendency to want to do more, just drill and kill or rote memorization, I'm a little afraid that's gonna be like a creeping thing. Like it'll creep a little bit and then creep a little bit more. So, that's one of the things that I'll be really reinforcing with teachers, that we don't want that to come back and drive our instruction.
Right. Yeah, it's like you almost need a few years for it to become a habit before it really kind of steps in. And if you stop it too soon, it just kind of goes away. Jamy?
So I absolutely agree with the two things Margaret and Jeannine are saying there. With things that we need to be back, we need things to be normal, and so one of the other things that I would hope creeps away is the fact that these teachers are tied to their jobs 24/7. And we can only hope that goes away. We know how passionate and involved and dedicated our staff are. but the amount of, time that they are expected by students, and just student schedules are different. Our especially at the high school level. I mean, our kids are submitting questions at 11:50 at night, because that's when they're up. Like, that's when they're doing their thing, and our teachers are like, "Oh, I've got them. I gotta answer this email. I gotta answer." And it's like, we got to get some of that back. Just our own time. So I would hope that's something that fades away, is that 24/7 connection to online learning.
Before I get to Bonnie, I think one of the things that you guys said a little bit earlier was, I guess, kind of on the path of like student agency. So it seems like there's been a trend for a while to maybe give students a little bit more agency, but it seems like with COVID, you've just been kind of forced to do it. Like, do you guys see teachers, especially when we're back in person, giving kids more freedom and more work, kind of like outside the classroom, and trusting them to get it done? Like, how do you see that playing out? Like, do you guys see more homework or more independent work when we come back in person? Bonnie, maybe?
I don't necessarily think that. In our district, we've always put a lot of responsibility on the students. I think it has actually been more challenging in a virtual setting, and that there have been more students engaged in that content, because when they are in the classroom, you can excite them about that content. It's so much easier to create those personal connections and those connections with the content, and then they want to go and continue learning. And I think that that's actually one thing that I hope will fall, is this kind of isolation socially, but also isolation from the excitement of learning. They're not in the classroom with you. And it's so much easier to win a student over when they're excited, and then they start to take ownership of that. So I think that is something that I'd like to see changing, and for it to go away.
It's just one of the great things. I think especially when we think about STEM, especially for younger kids, like, they don't have recess together, they don't have play, they don't have, for older kids, a lot of them don't have sports. Like, how do you make up for that lack of, how do you bring play and excitement and like fellowship into learning in this kind of new environment? How have you guys been able to do that? Maybe start with Jamy.
So, I mean, our situation being that 70% of our kids are in, we had a full fall sports season at the high school level, which, and again, to me, sports are, I was the athletic director prior to this. So sports to me are a huge piece of the puzzle here, and are ways to get those kids that are virtual full-time, that engagement and our interaction with their peers and with other adults, with our coaches and in clubs and, our music program and things like that, we need to be able to sustain those things to continue to give those outlets to students. And again, I think what we have done, especially in the elementary school where you see less of those things, with being able to do STEM in our STEM program, and we're fortunate that we have that, that they have gotten a lot of very similar activities, and they feel like they're a part of the class. They're basically in there doing the exact same things. They just happen to be doing them from home. And you can see the passion and enjoyment on those kids' faces when they're building something and testing it and showing that on video to the rest of the kids in the class, like they were right there. So I think that's been great for us.
Great. Bonnie?
So in our district, we've had a focus on social emotional learning. Every Wednesday, we have a time in both middle schools, a period at the end of the day where they meet with a specific teacher each Wednesday. And they actually do activities where they can interact more and talk more, but then also just training teachers and encouraging them to use social emotional learning activities in the classroom, giving them opportunities to share about themselves. They are, in the middle school especially, very reluctant to be talking. So any opportunities to kind of break down some of those walls where they can see commonalities, we have found helpful.
Interesting. Margaret, what are you guys doing?
We also have a focus on the SEL needs of the students. And one of the things that we've been able to observe through these portfolio observations is actual recordings of teachers in their Google breakout rooms. So they're doing those office hours or the feedback loops at the end of the day. And I think through those small group meetings in these breakout rooms, even the middle school kids from grades 6 through 8 have the opportunity to speak to each other and to the teacher one-on-one. So it's sort of opened up a little bit more. I know that in the younger grades, they do still start every day out with, who has something to share, and, they spin the wheel and who's going to share today. So they are still simulating a regular classroom environment and allowing the students to talk and share. But getting those upper elementary kids to speak was definitely a challenge that a lot of the teachers were concerned about in September and October. But through that feedback loop, I think we're sort of overcoming that. We also have a number of teachers who have been able to assign collaborative STEM projects that the kids were working on, and they would just piggyback off of each other, even though they're working in separate homes, and then they piece together, either a Google slideshow or a video working collaboratively on WeVideo, and then they post that with the classroom. Even since March, we've really increased the number of social media posts. We weren't really a big Facebook or Twitter district, but in order to highlight all of the great things that we have going on both at home and in the classroom, we've sort of opened that up a little bit. And it's been fun to see, and it's been fun for the parents and the community to see too.
Well, and Jean, you have a very diverse student body. What are you guys doing?
So we have a number of challenges because of that diverse student body and some of the economic challenges that come into play. But really keeping the focus on the kids, making sure that we're not just using student-centered approaches, but really student-driven focuses to instruction. So we've accelerated our move towards the NGSS storyline approach because that is a student-driven approach. We typically do some team building at the beginning of the year, and it might be, one of the STEM building kind of teamwork projects, the cups, or, each grade level does a variety of different things. And so since we can't really do those kinds of physical things, one of the classrooms simulated like Among Us as an outbreak version. And so the kids had to work together to figure out who had been in the virtual Google Meet breakout room, who infected the other kids. And then as they switched rooms, they had to put their thinking together to figure out who had it first. So by, really trying to combine creatively, pop culture with, stuff that they're just really engaged with. And it is a challenge. I agree. Sometimes it's a challenge in the middle school to get kids to question or, say what those wonderings are aloud. And so we've had to work really carefully to build that comfort level for asking questions and saying, I wonder, and, using question formulation technique in different ways in order to make it work virtually. And so if kids sort of get a sense of how they can use gamification electronically, right? Using a system like Legends of Learning or a simulation, and then we start to build in, if you ask the questions, we could work together to build something that could be like that, and model it like this Among Us outbreak kind of activity. Then you can really kind of pique their interest and get more kids to turn their cameras on and more kids to put something in the chat. And then again, we have Securely, which can help because students can put their questions privately to the teacher through Securely. So, just finding ways around the barriers and developing those relationships that we had last year when we went out. In March, there was already a relationship. And here we had to build from the ground up. And so, we continue to focus on those SEL competencies.
Yeah, we have a feature on Legends, kind of like a buddy list feature where you can connect with kids in your class, and you actually can't chat. because that opens a whole other can of worms, but you can show off your avatar and the dance moves that you've earned and things like that. And it's just a cool way for kids to kind of learn stuff and then customize their avatar and then show it off to their friends. And it's a way to like see to see different classmates in a different way, especially for some kids who are shy and may not want to actually be talking on a Zoom.
Right.
If you guys like games, there's a really cool board game. It actually predates COVID called Pandemic. And it's a game where you actually play, instead of playing against each other, you actually all play with each other against the board game to basically solve a pandemic. Obviously the game is somewhat timely, but it's a pretty cool game. You probably find it at like Target or get it on Amazon or something like that, but it's a fun family game for the holidays. So I'm going to kind of reflect into the future a little bit. So we're in this kind of weird time period where cases are at an all-time high, which is very unfortunate. On the flip side, it seems like there's been very positive news about a vaccine coming over the course of the spring. So with all these different changes up in the air, I mean, you guys are planning, you're in budgeting season for the next school year already. So how do you guys think about next school year with budget uncertainty and you're not sure? Presumably we're going to be in person, but perhaps not. Like, we don't really know. How long will it take for the vaccine to get distributed to everybody? How do you guys think about, how do you plan for next school year? Maybe start with Bonnie.
Well, we plan very flexibly.
No plan at all.
Every decision changes by the week. And so when we're really looking to get through the year, and we do feel that the core of the resources, the technology resources we have are effective, but there are pieces that could be enhanced. But we want to think when we're ordering something that could be used in a virtual setting, but also something that will be useful when the students come back into the classroom, because we don't want to be spending money on resources that will only be useful in one of those two settings without knowing what we're going to be in next year.
Okay, so an emphasis on flexibility and resources makes sense. Jamy?
So I think one of the processes we use this year that I will use moving forward as long as we still are in the unknown is we kind of went with a theory that, we do our ordering over the summer. It was, let's buy for the first 2 months. Let's figure out what we need. If we're in person and we're going to do this, what do we need for 2 months? And then that way we didn't bind up all of our money. We had the flexibility there to be able to say, okay, we need to shift. And we had to do that. We had to, to make some changes. We had to purchase some different softwares that we wouldn't have normally used. Now that we're still in, I've done another round of ordering already, and that has happened this month, and stuff is starting to come in again now. But even that wasn't the remainder of the money. It's, it's kind of dragging this out and just kind of playing it almost market period by market period. And, where you normally in education, we like to be way ahead. We're just kind of keeping the straw above water right now, so to say, and, keeping moving that way and trying to do things as resourceful as possible.
Margaret?
So we're already starting to have to put our budgets together for next year. So as I am looking at the programs that we have, I am looking at, as we said before, flexibility, but also the capability of the programs to personalize instruction for the students. And if the program works with one roster and does auto rostering, that's a huge plus for us, so that it saves us some time. We sort of held back a little bit this year on ordering any new extra equipment for example, VR equipment. We held back on that, so we had that supply budget to sort of rely upon in case we needed it someplace else. So that's really what we're looking at. I'll definitely be looking for usage reports from this past year to see what was used best or what started to increase in usage as the virtual instruction continued.
Makes sense. Jeannine, take it home.
I would agree with Jamy. We did a lot of, taking pieces at a time in terms of our ordering and, wisely using our funds this year. I would also agree in terms of planning forward for next year, really taking a look at what was impactful this year, certainly in terms of the math budget, I did not order workbooks like we would normally have for our program this past year, knowing
All of the trees of the world, thank you.
yes, knowing that we might not be in person in September, and we said, well, if we'll see, maybe we'll order them in October. Well, they're not ordered, and they're not going to be ordered. And, I think that's going to free up a nice little piece of the budget because we have made it work. And I think that, those funds can be used for other, possible supports for the students, because we know that we're going to have students returning with some gaps from interrupted learning, despite our best efforts. I mean, the teachers have absolutely worked night and day to try to engage the students and prevent the gaps. But I think it, especially, with populations where equity is an issue, we're going to have gaps. So I think we can definitely redirect that money towards other ways of engaging students. And again, focusing really tightly on the core.
That's great. And I assume everyone's hoping for Congress to get its act together one of these days and pass a nice big stimulus bill, right? Great. One more quick question for everyone. What can companies like Legends, what can ed tech companies do better? Like, is there something that's missing? Is it better rostering? Or what is the one thing that just companies in general can do better to support you guys these days? Is it more PD? Is it less emails? Like, what's that one thing, Bonnie?
Well,
Emails, but other people might.
I think versatility, because the programs are being used in so many different settings with so many different populations, and having features like the ability to have multiple teachers on at a time, the ability to see student data very easily and to access it. So it's this idea that the technology is easy to access and is easy to use in the classroom, virtually, hybrid, in any kind of environment that we find ourselves in.
Great. Jeannine?
I would say I absolutely agree with that, and would add on that idea of going back to the performance-based assessments that we really need. Anything that we can continue to do to wrap around, whether it's an investigation or an experience, and help scaffold towards, what that could look like for performance-based assessment, and the data that could be provided is always, really going to be helpful, so that it's more, again, easy to access, but also more rounded for the teachers to be able to choose from in resources. And the other thing I would say is, Legends has been really good about advocating for, the community. And I would say if companies can continue to advocate for education and for the kids and for the teachers, I think you have an important voice to be heard, especially in New Jersey. The education community has been beaten up in prior years, and when industry professionals, can provide that extra voice, I think it's really powerful.
Well, I think perhaps one of the benefits of a lot of parents / voters / citizens seeing their kids being educated at home is, they see the need for more resources. They see where your money is going. They see how hard the teachers are working. Hopefully they have a little bit more appreciation for that. I know we certainly do. Margaret, and then we'll get to Jamy, and then we'll open it up for questions.
So the only thing that I can think of is continued flexibility in offering the training, which you guys have been so good to my staff. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, we love that. I mean, I think, one of the benefits for us of not traveling is our training team has the capacity to, we're not going into buildings, so they can do smaller trainings, they can do grade level trainings, whereas, in the past we wouldn't drive or fly somewhere to do a grade level training. We can do that remotely now. And I think in the past also, we've just seen, like, sometimes if you did a Zoom training, teachers kind of weren't really into it, but now Zoom has just become so norm that the Zoom training can be just as effective as the in-person training. And, we still want to get into buildings too, because you build those personal relationships, but Jamy.
I would say, and it's probably less on the ed tech companies, it's more on like our student information systems. I feel like they are very incompatible with a lot of the things that we do, unfortunately. And, you know, you'll hear, I follow a lot of different things in different places, and, you know, people asking what's the best SIS system to use, and nobody has a good answer. We're a power school district. I couldn't tell you a good thing. You know, they're from a support side, it's just a challenge. Like, it's, you know, I get it. It's all code. It's people that are working on things in a different level than education. And we're looking for ease. We're looking for convenience. We're managing, you know, 10 to 15 different programs across different disciplines that they all communicate differently. They all, you know, this one will do it through Clever. This one will do it through Google Classroom Sync. This one does it through an upload. This one does it through some other rostering process.
And wisdom, and would love to open it up to questions. So Lindsay, could you please go ahead and moderate those for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for being with us today, everyone. My name's Lindsay, and I'm the events coordinator here at Legends. You guys had some great questions throughout the panel, and if you have any more, you could just use the question answer button at the bottom of your screen, and I'll go ahead and read them to our panelists. So first, a little bit earlier in the panel, we had a question about collaboration. So how are you in this virtual or hybrid world still allowing for group projects and other sorts of student collaboration projects where they're working together?
Someone's got to grab it.
Well, some of the technology that we've been using, I was super simple, just having 3 students on the same Google Doc and actually using kind of the annotation and the chat feature within the Google Doc, because it allows the teacher to see the discussion and it allows the teacher to see who's talking to who, and to perhaps encourage participation of others. But it cannot, but programs like Jamboard also we've used to help like encourage discussion and participation.
Great.
And I would say with those group assignments, you know, Google lends itself nicely to any of those things, whether the kid is in class or virtual, to be able to work together. And I know, you know, every science and technology class I've been in, anytime it's a group work thing, there's always one virtual student assigned with in-person students. So they're never kind of working on their own. They're always a part of it. You know, providing everybody with a job, just, you know, something as simple as that everybody has a task and everybody's task is a little different. And those tasks rotate every time you have something, you know, and making sure that at some point the virtual kid is the speaker. Let them be a part of that. They can still talk. We can hear you through that device. So just little things like that, I think, can, you know, help with that as well.
That's a great idea.
I would tag in that not just the accountability of jobs, but just like really thinking about what were your good practices in school. So it might look different, but it's the same function. So if you need to have accountability, fine. If you need to make sure that the kids clearly understand what they're going to do before you send them out into a breakout room, you know, that is now, you know, to the next level of importance for clarity of instructions, modeling what it is that you're looking for and expecting because you can't do it physically. But the function is the same. So I think that as long as we keep going back and saying, you know, what do I need to account for? It just may look differently now. If you account for all those same things, you know, everything's going to be okay.
I think that Jeannine is 100% correct, and it really lends itself to the teacher planning it out in the same way they did when they were in the physical classroom. And it just is a matter of how you're communicating what the different roles are, what the responsibilities are, and making sure everybody knows what tools are available to them. But I don't think it should be much different virtually or in a hybrid approach than it is in the physical classroom.
Great.
Great. So the last question is going to be about some specific tools We talked a lot about the hands-on and how we're kind of shifting away from that right now during the current state. And simulations were brought up. And so there's a question about what specific platforms or tools do you use for these simulations?
So I'll take that because we've been using Explore Learning's gizmos for probably about 12 years. So that's the one that we're the most familiar with. Recently, we moved to, we also added Amplify Science in for grades 6, 7, 8, which has simulations built into its platform. And then we'll use the simulations that are on PhET for free.
Our district as well, we've been on gizmos for a while now, and we also use PhET. And what I do like about Gizmo Labs too is that they have math simulations as well, which have not been as used in the past, but we're looking to be incorporating them more as we're teaching virtually.
I would echo those programs as well. Same thing. I mean, they seem to be working very well for our teachers, you know, and being able to provide that almost demo-like process, and then, you know, you do the pieces and the parts of the actual lab that you can do.
Absolutely. And then we have one last quick question here. One of the attendees is wondering for any off-screen ideas for students. So they're currently all virtual, and they know something was mentioned about doing stuff outside, but with the weather being colder, they were just wondering what other off-screen ideas that you all have for students in a virtual setting.
No problem.
Well, there is always, you know, go out and observe the night sky. You know, I mean, we're getting ready to see something fabulous with the alignment of the planets coming up December 16th. There's always moon observation. You know, we did a lot of noticing the constellations moving across the sky. In the spring, we still did the caterpillars growing into butterflies, and everybody just came and picked them up and then distributed them to their students, and everybody jumped on it. So those were just a couple of off-screen, get them away from the computer and up and out. But observation is key. What phenomenon are they seeing outside when they, you know, walk around their property? So that's still very important. And to bring those, what are you wondering about? What did you see in the morning? What phenomenon did you see? And bring that back to the classroom, and that stimulates some great conversation.
Two ideas that we've used with our students are design challenges. They're good inside and outside, depending on the ones that you pick. We have had a couple teachers actually supply the materials, which is very time consuming, but it was really effective, and they had a fantastic time with their students. And then also encouraging the students to use the materials around their house to create models of different phenomena that they're studying.
My daughter is taken to painting boxes that come from Amazon. That's her new artistic hobby. Well,
I would just say I agree. You know, don't forget about weather and water. We didn't specifically say that, ecology, but I agree. There are a lot of things that students can observe. They can throw a ball and really, you know, pay close attention to what it looks like to start looking at physics. It is a challenge, but they need to relate it to their life anyway. So these are things we probably should have been doing more all along.
And I would say also with all of those, the openness and willingness to accept any type of method of completion. So whether it is a student that likes to write and they're writing about what they saw in the night sky, you know, that kid that does want to take a picture or uses a telescope, and like any medium to get that understanding and for that student to be able to explain what they saw, you know, I think is important. And that's a shift in philosophy of, you know, what we typically would do.
Great. Well, this has been amazing. We're going to do this again in the spring, but we're going to flip it and have you guys provide classroom teachers and get a completely different perspective. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and I wish everyone a wonderful holidays. Stay well, and again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This was really informative. I think everybody learned a lot, and it was super fun for me to moderate. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone. Really
Bye,
appreciate it.
everyone. Be well.